Evening. What are you doing out here?
Heading home, officer. Just unlocking my car.
You work here?
I do. Faculty. Department of Economics.
Got any proof of that? You authorized to be on campus this late?
This is my assigned parking space. My office is in that building behind you.
Nice car. You sure this is yours?
Yes, sir. Titled in my name. You'd like to see registration?
Go ahead and grab it.
Officer Derry. Whitfield had been with the Maplewood Police Department for 11 years when he made the arrest that would cost him everything. He was 38 years old. Experienced enough to know better, but apparently convinced that a black man walking confidently across a university campus on a Saturday morning had to be up to something. Saturday morning in late September at Hartwell University, he responded to a call about a suspicious person near the administration building. The suspicious person was Dr. Marcus Avery Patterson, a 54-year-old educator with 28 years in higher education, the man who had been appointed president of Hartwell University just 8 months earlier. He was taking his usual weekend walk across the campus he led. What Whitfield did next, ignoring credentials, dismissing explanations, and handcuffing the university's highest-ranking official in front of stunned witnesses, would become a textbook example of how racial profiling destroys careers and costs cities millions. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop a comment right now and tell me your country, your state, wherever you are. If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. Hartwell University sits on 180 acres of manicured grounds in the heart of Maplewood, a prosperous college town about 40 miles north of the state capital. The campus is the kind of place that looks like it belongs in a recruitment brochure. Georgian brick buildings covered in ivy, wide walkways lined with oak trees, students studying on pristine lawns. The administration building, Henderson Hall, anchors the main quad with its white columns and copper dome that has turned green with age. It was just after 9 in the morning on a Saturday in late September. The air was crisp with the first hints of autumn. Most students were still sleeping off Friday night, and the campus had that peaceful emptiness that comes with weekend mornings. A few joggers passed by. A maintenance worker drove a small cart toward the science complex. Birds sang in the old-growth trees. Dr. Marcus Avery Patterson had been with Hartwell University for 8 months, though his career in higher education spanned nearly 3 decades. 28 years working in academic leadership that required vision, diplomacy, and an extraordinary ability to navigate complex institutional politics. He'd spent 12 years as a professor of economics at Stanford, publishing groundbreaking research on wealth inequality that had been cited over 4,000 times. 8 years before that as an associate dean at Georgetown, where he'd restructured the undergraduate advising system and increased graduation rates by 14%. For years as provost at Emory, where he'd overseen a billion-dollar capital campaign that exceeded its goal by $200 million. He had testified before Congress on educational access. He had coordinated with the Department of Education on federal grant programs. He had trained generations of academic administrators who now held positions at universities across the country. He'd received the Carnegie Foundation's Academic Leadership Award. His board of trustees called him visionary. His faculty called him accessible. His students called him Doc P. At 54 years old, Marcus was exactly where he'd worked his entire life to be, leading a respected university, shaping the next generation, and finally having the authority to implement the changes he'd spent decades advocating for. That Saturday Marcus was doing what he did most weekend mornings. He was walking the campus. He wore khaki pants and a navy quarter-zip pullover with the Hartwell logo embroidered on the chest, comfortable walking shoes. His university ID was in his wallet, which was in his back pocket. He looked like what he was. A man who belonged there. A man who, in fact, was responsible for everything that happened there. He'd done nothing to attract attention. He'd spoken to no one except a brief wave to a groundskeeper he recognized. But to one person watching from the administration building, Dr. Patterson's presence was a problem. Kyle Brewer was 24 years old. He'd been a campus security guard at Hartwell University for just under 2 years. He had a criminal justice degree from a community college and aspirations of becoming a police officer. He'd applied to 3 departments so far without success. Kyle was diligent, punctual, and deeply concerned about maintaining what he called campus safety. He took pride in knowing the rhythms of the university, who belonged where and when. And this Saturday morning, Kyle had noticed something that made him uncomfortable. A black man walking slowly across the main quad, pausing occasionally to look at buildings. In Kyle's mind, something didn't add up. This wasn't a student. Too old. This wasn't a professor. They didn't usually come in on Saturday mornings, and certainly not dressed so casually. This wasn't a parent. There were no prospective students in sight. Never mind that the man walked with complete confidence. Never mind that he wore a pullover with the university logo. Never mind that his demeanor was calm, unhurried, completely at ease. Kyle saw a black man and decided he didn't belong. He watched Dr. Patterson for about 10 minutes, working up the courage to do something about it. Then he picked up his radio and called the campus security office. I've got a suspicious individual on the main quad. Black male, mid-50s, walking near Henderson Hall. He's been looking at the buildings. I don't recognize him. The dispatcher asked if the individual was doing anything threatening or illegal. Not exactly, Kyle admitted. But he's been walking around for a while, just looking at stuff. I think we should have someone check it out. The campus security supervisor, who was new and didn't want to seem dismissive, decided to call it in to Maplewood Police as a potential trespassing situation. Better safe than sorry. Officer Derek Whitfield had been with the Maplewood Police Department for 11 years. In that time, he'd compiled a record that should have raised red flags at every level of supervision. 12 complaints. 12 complaints in 11 years. 9 of them involved allegations of racial profiling or excessive force against people of color. 3 had been sustained, resulting in written reprimands and mandatory sensitivity training that Whitfield had treated as a joke. The other 6 had been closed with insufficient evidence despite multiple witness statements and, in 2 cases, video that mysteriously never made it into the official file. Whitfield had a pattern. He responded aggressively to calls involving people of color in spaces where he didn't think they belonged. 3 years earlier, he detained a black real estate agent for casing houses in an upscale neighborhood. The agent had been showing properties to clients. The complaint was dismissed. 2 years earlier, he'd stopped a Latino family for suspicious behavior in a park. They'd been having a birthday party for their 8-year-old. The complaint resulted in a verbal warning. 18 months earlier, he'd questioned a black teenager for loitering outside a coffee shop. The teenager was waiting for his mother to pick him up after his shift. That complaint was still being investigated when Whitfield responded to Hartwell University. The pattern was clear. The documentation was extensive. But somehow, Whitfield remained on patrol. His supervisors noted in evaluations that he was results-oriented but sometimes needs to work on community relations. Well, those notes never translated into meaningful consequences. When Whitfield received the call about a suspicious person at Hartwell University, his mind immediately filled in a narrative. Another criminal type wandering where he shouldn't be, probably looking for something to steal, maybe casing the campus for a break-in. Whitfield arrived at Hartwell University at 9:47 a.m. He parked his cruiser near the main quad and stepped out, adjusting his belt. He walked toward Henderson Hall, scanning the area, looking for someone who seemed out of place. His eyes landed on Dr. Marcus Patterson. The man was standing near a bench, looking up at the administration building with what Whitfield interpreted as calculating interest. In Whitfield's mind, that had to be the problem. He walked directly toward the man. Dr. Patterson was admiring the restoration work that had been completed on Henderson Hall's facade the previous month when he became aware of someone approaching with purpose. He turned and saw a police officer, hand resting casually on his belt, holster aggressiven. "Sir, what are you doing here?" Patterson blinked, surprised by the hostile tone. "I'm sorry. I asked what you're doing here. This is private property. I'm aware it's private property. I'm taking a walk." Taking a walk, Whitfield's voice dripped with skepticism. "Do you have any affiliation with this university?" Patterson almost laughed. "Yes, I have an affiliation with this university." "What kind of affiliation? Are you a student? A vendor? What?" "I work here. You work here." On a Saturday, in street clothes, Whitfield wasn't buying it. "What department?" Patterson felt the familiar weight of this moment settling on his shoulders. He'd been here before. Not at this university, but in this situation. Too many times over too many years. "I'm in administration." Administration, Whitfield repeated the word like it tasted bad. "What? You're a janitor? Maintenance?" "No. I'm the president of this university. Have you ever been questioned or stopped in a place where you clearly belonged? Type yes or no in the comments." Whitfield stared at him. For a moment, something flickered across his face. Doubt, maybe, or the first hint that he might have made an error. But then his expression hardened. "You're the president?" His tone made it clear he didn't believe it. "Dr. Marcus Patterson, I've been president of Hartwell University for 8 months. Anyone can say that. You got any proof?" Patterson reached slowly for his back pocket. "I'm going to take out my wallet. My university ID is inside." Whitfield's hand moved to his weapon. Slowly, Patterson removed his wallet with exaggerated care. He extracted his university ID and held it out. The card had his photo, his name, and his title. President Hartwell University. Whitfield took the card and examined it. His eyes moved from the photo to Patterson's face, back to the photo. The resemblance was unmistakable. The card looked legitimate. "These can be faked," Whitfield said finally. "I assure you, it's not fake. How do I know that? Anyone can make a fake ID, officer. That's my official university identification. It has a hologram. It has a magnetic strip. It was issued by the university's Human Resources Department. I am telling you who I am. A woman walking a dog had stopped nearby, watching the interaction. She pulled out her phone. Whitfield didn't like being watched. He didn't like this man's calm demeanor. He didn't like the way this situation was developing. Most people he stopped didn't stand there answering questions like they had every right to. They got nervous. They fumbled. They complied. I'm going to need you to come with me while I verify this. Patterson's voice remained steady, but there was steel underneath now. I'm not going anywhere with you. I've identified myself. I've provided documentation. I've done nothing wrong, and I'm standing on my own campus. You're trespassing. Until I say otherwise, I can't be trespassing on property where I'm the chief executive. That's legally impossible. I'd suggest you contact your supervisor or the university's security office. They'll confirm my identity in about 30 seconds. Whitfield felt his face getting hot. This wasn't how stops were supposed to go. This man was supposed to be intimidated. He was supposed to apologize and explain himself. He wasn't supposed to cite legal principles and suggest procedures. I don't take orders from you. I'm not giving you orders. Officer Patterson glanced at the woman with the phone, then at a student who had appeared on the walkway, also recording. I'm giving you information that will prevent you from making a serious mistake. Are you threatening me? I'm informing you. There's a difference. Turn around. Hands behind your back. Patterson felt his heart rate increase, but his voice stayed controlled. On what charge? Failure to comply. I've complied with every lawful order. Showing you identification was compliance. Explaining who I am was compliance. I have not resisted. I have not fled. I have not been hostile. You have no legal basis for arrest. Turn around now or I'll add resisting to the charges. The woman with the dog spoke up. I'm recording this. I have everything on video. A groundskeeper had stopped his cart nearby. He recognized Dr. Patterson, his mouth hung open. Patterson made a decision. Fighting physically would only give Whitfield an excuse to escalate. The evidence was being gathered. The witnesses were recording. The truth would come out. I am Dr. Marcus Avery Patterson, president of Hartwell University. I am complying under protest with this unlawful arrest. Everyone here, please continue recording. This officer is arresting me for walking on the campus. I have committed no crime. Whitfield grabbed his arm and spun him around. The handcuffs went on too tight, the metal biting into Patterson's wrists. For a moment, Patterson felt the full weight of what was happening. He was 54 years old. He had a doctorate from Harvard. He had spent his life in service to education, and he was being handcuffed on his own campus for the crime of being black in a space where a police officer decided he didn't belong. You're under arrest for trespassing and failure to comply with a lawful order. I did not fail to comply, and I cannot trespass on my own property. I have stated this clearly. You are making a grievous error. The groundskeeper finally found his voice. Officer, that's Dr. Patterson. He's really the president. I see him every week. Stay out of this, Whitfield snapped. The woman with the dog stepped closer. Sir, I have your name tag on video, Whitfield. This is all recorded. Whitfield led Patterson toward his cruiser. Behind them, more people were gathering. More phones were out. The groundskeeper was already on his radio, his voice urgent. Do you think Officer Whitfield should have just called university security to verify Dr. Patterson's identity at this point? Let me know below. Whitfield put Patterson in the back of the cruiser, pushing his head down in the way cops do on television, the way that's designed to humiliate. Outside, Patterson could see the small crowd that had gathered. He saw the phones raised, the shocked faces, the disbelief. Officer Whitfield, Patterson said, reading the nameplate, you are violating my Fourth Amendment rights against unreasonable search and seizure. You are violating my 14th Amendment rights to equal protection. You have detained me without reasonable suspicion of any crime. You have arrested me without probable cause. This will end your career. Whitfield closed the door without responding. The drive to the Maplewood police station took 12 minutes. Patterson spent it cataloging every detail, every procedural violation, every word that had been spoken. He had testified as an expert witness in 2 civil rights cases during his time as a professor. He had served on a gubernatorial commission on police reform. He knew exactly how to build a case, and this case was building itself with every passing minute. They arrived at the station. Whitfield walked Patterson inside, still handcuffed, past the front desk where a sergeant looked up with mild interest. Whitfield, what do you have, trespasser? Picked him up at Hartwell University, refused to comply, couldn't provide valid identification. Patterson spoke up, voice clear and controlled. I am Dr. Marcus Patterson, president of Hartwell University. I provided Officer Whitfield with my official university identification. I explained my position repeatedly. I was arrested for walking on my own campus. The sergeant's face went pale. You're what now? I am the president of Hartwell University. I was arrested for taking a walk on Saturday morning. The sergeant looked at Whitfield. Tell me you verified his identity. He had an ID, but those can be faked. I was going to verify at the station. You arrested the president of the university without verifying who he was. I had reasonable suspicion based on the call. What was the call? What was he doing? Walking around, looking at buildings. The sergeant closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, his expression had changed to something cold and controlled. Get those handcuffs off him. Right now. The desk sergeant examined Patterson's university ID carefully. The hologram caught the light. The magnetic strip was intact. The seal of Hartwell University was crisp and official. These are real, Whitfield. They look like they could be fake. They're real. I've seen enough university IDs to know what a fake looks like, and this isn't it. The sergeant looked at Patterson. Sir, do you have any other identification? Driver's license. Patterson recited his full name, date of birth, address, and university employee ID number from memory. The sergeant typed the information into his computer. The screen filled with confirmation. Dr. Marcus Avery Patterson, President Hartwell University. Appointed January 15th, start date February 1st. The sergeant picked up his phone. I need to verify something with Hartwell University. The confirmation came back within 3 minutes. Yes, Dr. Marcus Avery Patterson was the president. Yes, he matched the physical description. Yes, he had been appointed 8 months ago. Yes, this was a catastrophic mistake. The sergeant hung up and turned to Whitfield, voice dropping to something cold and dangerous. You arrested the president of the university for walking on his own campus. I didn't know. They called Saeed. I don't care what the call said. You had his ID, you had his explanation, you had witnesses telling you who he was, and you arrested him anyway. Get those cuffs off. Now Whitfield removed the handcuffs. The metal had left visible marks on Patterson's wrists. Red indentations that would bruise by evening. Deputy Chief Amanda Torres arrived within 20 minutes. She was a 22-year veteran who'd seen officers make mistakes, but rarely one this egregious in this public. The sergeant briefed her quickly. Torres listened, expression unreadable. Then she turned to Patterson. Dr. Patterson, on behalf of the Maplewood Police Department, I sincerely apologize. This is inexcusable. Patterson nodded but remained silent. He was building his case. Every word mattered. Every reaction was being filed away. Torres turned to Whitfield. Badge and weapon. Administrative leave effective immediately. Deputy Chief, I was responding to a call. I followed procedure. You arrested a man without verifiable probable cause. You ignored credentials. You ignored witnesses. You ignored common sense. Give me your badge. Whitfield handed them over, hands trembling slightly. For the first time, he seemed to understand the magnitude of what he'd done. Torres had Patterson's wrists photographed for evidence. The red marks were documented, along with the tightness of the cuff application. A full incident report was initiated. Dr. Patterson, would you like medical attention? Not immediately. But I would like a copy of all body camera footage from Officer Whitfield and any other officers who may have been present. I would also like to dispatch recordings and the name of whoever initiated the call to police. Torres nodded. You'll have full cooperation. I appreciate that. I will also be contacting my attorney. Should officers face automatic termination after arresting someone who clearly identifies themselves with valid credentials? Drop your answer. Within 4 hours, the videos had exploded across social media. Multiple angles from different witnesses showed the same damning sequence. A well-dressed black man being questioned, presenting identification, explaining his position, and then being handcuffed and led away. Breaking, university president arrested for walking on his own campus. Watch. Cop arrests black university president despite multiple forms of ICE. Hartwell president Dr. Marcus Patterson handcuffed for trespassing at university. He leads. The outrage was immediate and intense. The American Association of University Presidents issued a formal statement condemning the arrest and calling for a full investigation. The NAACP demanded Officer Whitfield's termination and a comprehensive review of the Maplewood Police Department's policies. The state governor's office released a statement expressing deep concern and promising to monitor the situation. Kyle Brewer, the security guard who had made the initial call, gave a brief statement to his supervisor. I didn't know who he was. He was just walking around looking at stuff. I thought I was doing my job. He was terminated within 48 hours. The university's official statement noted that his actions had demonstrated a fundamental failure of judgment that cannot be remediated through additional training. Hartwell University issued a formal statement expressing profound outrage at the treatment of its president and announcing an immediate review of its relationship with the Maplewood Police Department, including all existing contracts for campus security support. But the real damage was done. The video showed everything. A black man walking peacefully on a university campus. A police officer approaching with hostility, an ID being dismissed, handcuffs being applied despite protests, despite witnesses, despite the truth. Civil rights attorneys contacted Dr. Patterson within hours. This wasn't just embarrassing for the police department. This was false arrest, violation of civil rights, assault, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and racial discrimination in violation of the Equal Protection Clause. The lawsuit named Officer Derek Whitfield, the Maplewood Police Department, the City of Maple, campus security guard Kyle Brewer, and Hartwell University's security contractor. The claims were extensive: violation of Fourth Amendment rights against unreasonable seizure, violation of 14th Amendment rights to equal protection under law, false arrest, false imprisonment, assault, and battery in the application of unnecessarily tight handcuffs, intentional infliction of emotional distress, negligent hiring and supervision in retaining Officer Whitfield despite his documented history of complaints, negligent training in failing to establish proper identification, verification protocols, racial discrimination under federal and state civil rights statutes, and conspiracy to violate civil rights through the coordinated actions of multiple defendants. The City of Maplewood's attorneys reviewed the evidence and reached the same conclusion: indefensible. The videos were everywhere, viewed millions of times. The witnesses were credible. The prior complaints against Whitfield created a pattern of deliberate indifference that exposed the city to massive punitive damages. The City of Maplewood settled within 4 months, $12.5 million paid to Dr. Patterson. An additional $2.5 million from the university's security contractor, whose employee had initiated the incident. The total, $15 million. Officer Derek Whitfield was terminated 6 weeks after the incident. The termination letter was final and devastating. Your actions on September 24th demonstrated a pattern of racial bias that has been documented repeatedly throughout your tenure with this department. You arrested a citizen without probable cause, ignored valid identification, dismissed credible witness testimony, and caused significant physical and emotional harm to an individual who posed no threat and committed no crime. Your conduct was not only a violation of departmental policy, but a violation of the constitutional rights you swore to protect. Whitfield's name was entered into the state's police decertification database. His law enforcement career was over at 38 years old. No department in the state would hire him. Kyle Brewer faced lesser but still significant consequences. His termination prevented him from ever working in campus security again. His applications to police departments, already unsuccessful, became permanently futile once the incident appeared in background checks. The Maplewood Police Department faced intense scrutiny. How had Whitfield, with 12 complaints over 11 years, remained on patrol? Why hadn't supervisors acted on the clear pattern of racial profiling? What other officers had similar records that had been overlooked? Internal Affairs conducted a comprehensive review. The findings were damning. Complaint investigations had been cursory and often incomplete. Supervisor evaluations had used euphemistic language that obscured serious behavioral problems. Disciplinary measures had been inconsistent and often inadequate. Training on implicit bias had been treated as a box to check rather than a genuine intervention. And the department's culture had prioritized making stops over constitutional policing. The Department of Justice opened a pattern and practice investigation. Their preliminary findings confirmed systemic failure at every level, disproportionate stops of people of color, inadequate supervision of officers with multiple complaints, and a disciplinary system designed to protect officers rather than hold them accountable. Reforms were announced: mandatory verification protocols before any trespassing arrest, automatic review of all stops involving people of color in historically white spaces, independent oversight of all complaints alleging racial profiling, real-time tracking of officer stop patterns with automatic flags for statistical anomalies, psychological evaluation for officers with multiple complaints, and community oversight boards with subpoena power. Dr. Patterson testified at a city council hearing on police reform. His testimony was powerful. I have spent my entire career in education because I believe in the transformative power of knowledge. I believe that people can learn, can grow, can change. But I also know that learning requires accountability. It requires consequences for failure. For too long, police departments across this country have operated without meaningful consequences for officers who treat some citizens differently than others. My experience was not unique. It was not an aberration. It was a predictable outcome of a system that protects bias instead of correcting it. He paused, looking around the room at the cameras, the council members, the community activists. I was lucky. I had the resources to fight back. I had the platform to be heard. I had the credibility that comes with my position. What about the people who don't? What about the young black man who gets stopped for looking suspicious but doesn't have a Harvard doctorate and a university presidency to validate his right to exist in public space? What happens to him? The room was silent. Should racial profiling in educational spaces trigger automatic termination and decertification for officers? Drop your answer. This wasn't just an embarrassing mistake. This was proof that for some people, no credential is enough when bias has made its decision. Dr. Marcus Patterson did everything right. He remained calm. He explained who he was. He provided identification. He cited his rights. He complied with the arrest under protest to avoid escalation. He was dressed professionally, behaving peacefully, standing on property he literally controlled, and none of it mattered. Because Officer Derek Whitfield saw a black man in a space where his biased mind said black men didn't belong. He saw the confidence and interpreted it as arrogance. He saw the calm and interpreted it as resistance. He saw the credentials and decided they must be fake. Every piece of evidence that should have resolved the situation was filtered through a bias that had already made its judgment. This is how systemic racism operates in everyday spaces. It's not always violent or dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, insidious, built on assumptions that seem reasonable until examined. It's a security guard who sees a black man walking on a college campus and feels uncomfortable without being able to articulate why. It's a police officer who treats valid identification as suspicious because it doesn't match his mental image of who should hold that position. It's a system that allows 12 complaints over 11 years without meaningful consequence, because the complaints come from the wrong kind of people about the wrong kind of concerns. And when that bias is backed by the authority to detain, to arrest, to handcuff, to humiliate, it doesn't just harm individuals. It sends a message. You don't belong here. No matter your degrees, no matter your achievements, no matter your rights, no matter your humanity, Derek Whitfield's career is over. That's justice. The city of Maplewood paid $12.5 million. That's accountability. Kyle Brewer was fired. That's consequences. But $15 million doesn't undo the humiliation of being handcuffed in front of your own employees. It doesn't restore the sense of safety that should come from walking on your own campus. It doesn't erase the message that even a university presidency isn't enough to protect you from suspicion. The real question is, what changes now? Will police departments finally implement meaningful oversight of officers with documented patterns of bias? Will cities invest in the kind of training that actually changes behavior, not just checks boxers? Will communities demand accountability before the next viral video, not just after? Will we build systems that protect everyone's right to exist in public spaces without being criminalized? Because if we don't demand fundamental change, 10 where Ray who's waiting for the next Derek Whitfield, the next Kyle Brewer, the next Dr. Patterson, the next viral video that shouldn't have happened. Comment if you believe this should be law. Automatic decertification for any officer who arrests someone after they provide valid identification that is later verified. And if you think these stories need to be told, if you believe accountability starts with awareness and change starts with pressure, then hit that subscribe button, because we're not stopping. We're going to keep exposing these patterns. We're going to keep demanding better. We're going to keep fighting for the university presidents, the doctors, the lawyers, and especially for the ordinary people who don't have prestigious titles but deserve the same right to exist in public spaces without being treated like criminals. What's your biggest takeaway from this story? Drop it in the comments below. This isn't just about one officer, one security guard, one university president. It's about all of us and the world we're willing to accept. See you in the next one.